The English Reformation was a series of events that occurred in 16th century England in which the Church of England broke away from the Pope and the Roman Catholic Church. The English Reformation began during the reign of King Henry VIII because he wanted a divorce from his first wife, Catherine of Aragon. Being Roman Catholic, this was not a possibility because the Catholic Church divorce was not allowed. In order to end the marriage, King Henry VIII ordered the Archbishop Thomas Cranmer to annul the marriage as the request had already been denied by the Pope. After King Henry disagreed with the Pope on divorce, he proclaimed himself supreme head of the Church. Pope Clement VII failed to recognize and deal with the significant changes of the Reformation. He was the Pope whose refusal to give King Henry VIII a divorce started off the English Reformation. Catherine of Aragon was the first wife of King Henry VIII. During the course of their marriage, she was unable to produce a male heir to the throne. King Henry became impatient and wanted a divorce so he could marry his mistress, Anne Boleyn. Anne Boleyn was Queen of England from 1533 to 1536, as the second wife of King Henry VIII. She supported Henry in his break from Rome and was very active in the English Reformation. Anne and her father recruited a group of theologians, including Thomas Cranmer, to come up with historical evidence for royal supremacy. They produced a collection of writings which explained that in the earliest days of the Church, each province had its own Rome-free jurisdiction. God intended kings to be rulers of churches and be accountable only to God. Thomas Cranmer was the Archbishop during the reign of King Henry VIII. He is one of the men responsible for building the case for the king's annulment. Therefore, he was a leader in the English Reformation. Thomas More worked in the king's court. He was knighted and became a servant and a close friend to the king. After King Henry proclaimed himself supreme head of the church, More was called upon to take an oath to the king. Instead, he chose loyalty to the Pope and the sacrament of marriage. He was beheaded on July 6, 1535. Reformation means change. The English Reformation not only changed the ways of the church, but it was also a time of great change in politics, as well as the influence of new inventions on the English people. The invention of the printing press had a major effect on the citizens of Europe. Because of the printing press, information could be spread fast and accurately. This advancement took book copying away from the church, which made it more difficult for the church to control or edit what was being written. It is clear that the influence of the printing press had a big part in the separation of Europe's religious unity. St. William Tyndale is the father of the English Bible and the father of English language. His life's ambition was to give the English people a Bible in their own language. He was the author of the book Protestant Work on the Obedience of a Christian Man and How Christian Rulers Ought to Govern. A copy of this book was given to King Henry by his wife, Queen Anne. This book stated that the king was the ruler of church and state and reminded King Henry that it was his right to be king of the church and in his country. Cardinal Wolsey was the mentor of Thomas Cromwell. He worked for King Henry but fell out of favor with him after failing to grant him a divorce from Catherine. He died in 1530 on his way to stand trial for treason. Thomas Cromwell was a great influence on the English Reformation because he devised a plan to get King Henry a divorce from Catherine. In order to get around the Pope's disapproval of the king's annulment, Cromwell suggested that Henry make a break from Rome and name himself king of the church. By 1532, he was the king's chief minister. The conclusion of the English Reformation was the founding of the Protestant Church.